Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 24th Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mayor Mahoney. Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Redlinger.
Here.
Mr. Grenberg.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Reeds.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you, Don. Item number 2 is to approve the minutes of June 26, 2024. They have been distributed and they're on page 2 of the packet.
Move to approve, or second, one of the two.
Mr. Steen moves, Mr. Grinberg seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 26 as distributed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3 is to approve the order of the agenda. Again, it is in front of you.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Redlinger seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Item number 4 is the approval of the bills. We call on Susan Thompson, Finance Director for the City of Fargo. It's on page 5 of your packet.
Hi, so the list of the bills for July are in front of you. There's about a dozen of them. The typical ones, the large one, the Cass County Joint Water Resource District of almost 17 million with some land purchases. Next largest one is the City of Fargo, and that was primarily some storm lift rehabs. Anybody have any other questions?
Any questions from Ms. Thompson?
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
so first of all, just a comment, I'm very pleased to see Dorsey and Whitney's bills are now showing up in front of the Finance Committee. They weren't previous to this. And my question is, what is the hourly rate that we're paying Dorsey and Whitney? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd have to defer to Mr. Redlinger or Mr. Shockley.
Actually, the detail is in the packet.
You do have the detail? Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Yeah, the invoices follow this, so I don't know if you wanted to look at page 13 is where it starts, and it just has some general information on the detail of the billing, so that would be in there.
There the numbers are right there.
So right there, it looks like it's 398.
You want to know Dorsey Whitney, right?
Yes.
That's Onstead there. There it is.
I think Dorsey's on there as well.
I didn't see the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I don't know that I have the detail for Dorsey, but we could request it.
Could we, if you don't have the rates here?
I can ask for more detail. That's all that we've been provided that I'm aware
If
of.
you could we, Mr. Shockley's going to step to the microphone. If we don't have that information immediately available, I'd ask that it be available tomorrow for the full board meeting.
Yeah,
Mr. Shockley?
I don't have the specific amounts, but it is, their rates are higher than what you would see in the Fargo-Moorhead area because of the expertise in the P3 area. Or the litigation area, not the P3 area, the litigation area regarding large construction claims. We did get a discounted rate from their normal hourly rate. I want to say it depends upon the attorney working on it, but I believe the partner level was about $6.75 per hour. And then depending upon the associate or the other staff member working on it.
Mr. Chair.
Mayor Mahoney?
Mr. Shockley, when you look at the current legal bills of $254,000, is that just for the dispute or is that for a variety of services?
So, thank you, Mayor Mahoney. That's a great question. Currently, as you may be aware, there are multiple claims being made by the developer. So that is not just for one. They have a variety of claims that they're bringing forward through the claims process. So that's not just one claim. We're working on the format for presenting information to the board regarding the detail regarding what those potential claims are. And once we have a recommendation, we still have to work with the co-executive directors, but we're planning to bring forward a format for providing that information to the planning committee next month and then that would appear at the board meeting. But there's 3 or 4 claims that are sort of that will be coming forward shortly with the developer. And there's probably, just to be candid, we have a developer who makes aggressive claims, and it's part of the construction process, so. And-
Mr. Bothall, I believe, has the numbers you're looking for.
Yeah,
Commissioner Pipcorn.
Yeah, so my apologies. For the senior associates, it's $6.20 per hour. For partner level, it's $7.15 an hour. For another associate, it's $5.35 an hour. And then for Jocelyn, at the partner level, it's $800 an hour, which is less than their normal hourly rate. And once again, our firm does not have the expertise to handle that large of construction litigation. And so, yes, their hourly rates are higher than our firm's hourly rates, but this is a very specialized area of construction defense, and you're dealing with $1.5 billion contract. So there's.
Can I
it's
just add one more
understandable.
thing, Mr. Chair? I
Please,
will
Commissioner.
say, I've been on the Finance Committee for a long time, and Dorsey and Whitney bills were never in front of the Finance Committee, if I stand to be corrected. But I think this is great. I hope the public appreciates this, because these bills are being paid with public dollars. And so the billing rates are stunning to me. And this is a great concern, especially when it's $250,000, just one bill in 1 month. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Any additional questions on the bills that were presented?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think Commissioner Pepcorn's point, I think, we as a board, and working with our local legal representation, began preparing for this last fall. I think it's just a point that, it was a recommendation that we bring in, higher level expertise with the disputes that were coming before us. So this is something that, from a strategic standpoint, the authority did start talking about and support last fall.
Does anybody we've got 2 bills that are through June 30th of this year from Dorsey Whitney. And as you're explaining, John, it's different types of issues that they're addressing. But why would we have 2 invoices from them rather than 1?
I'd have to go back and look at the specifics, but I thought there was an overlap of some billing, and then there may have been one other issue that they're working through. Once again, we're facing multiple claims from the developer, so.
All right, thank you.
One indicated construction and one said employment, so they were for 2 different items.
All right, very good.
Understanding.
Thank you. Thank you for that information.
Mr. Chair.
Please, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe to that point, kind of assuring the horse has been beaten solid dead, right? In the future, it might be helpful in that, to your point, where it is actually tracked within our packet too. In the future, it might be helpful, like we asked our engineers, to track almost on a job-by-job basis, because we'll all understand it. Clearly, the staff internally will understand where the dollars are allocated and why. But if they came out and said, this is for job number X, this is for job number Y, within their billing, and they do actually invoice this as a client matter within the packet. So again, if anybody wants to, again, transparency being the utmost of the premium here, if anybody wants to start digging into this, they can see on a job-by-job or a task-by-task basis rather than the block. Because I think we are unfortunately going to have to go forward and probably be spending a lot more money with these people, and helping a public at large better understand where and why, I think is reasonable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Shockley is back at the microphone for some clarification.
We can certainly, in coordination with the presentation that we're working through with the co-executive directors, I could have Dorsey put together like a summary memo of what we do for our invoices, so you can track each claim. But just for context, as you think about, the legal fees may seem high, but the claims that are being made are, very, very significant. Tens of millions of dollars. And so it at this level, I understand it seems like a lot, but we're not just dealing with a sewer dispute that a local city deals with. The total contract price is $12 million. We're dealing with a $1.5 billion contract, and even 20% of $1.5 billion is a lot, it's huge. As a percentage, it's not that big for a contract dispute, but we're talking huge amounts of money.
Yeah, Mr. Shockley, if I may, Mr. Chair, I am concerned about the total, but it kind of is what it is at this stage. I'm just saying for secretarial or for tracking reasons, so people can then look task by task and go, oh, okay, well, and to further validate what you're saying, if it's a $20 million claim and they run up a $200,000 bill, it looks a lot less painless. I mean, it's still painful, but in the scheme of things, given what they're defending us against.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's exactly the conversation that we've been having internally as staff, is how to present that information to the board in a coherent, simplistic manner. And our intent was to present a draft to the planning committee at next month's meeting.
I do agree with Commissioner Pipcorn that, we are paying these with significant taxpayer dollars, and thus we should be as transparent as we can, making the public aware as to where these resources are going to. Mr. Paul Barthol has some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity, the document that's shown in the packet is just the cover sheet of their invoice. There is 23 pages of backup data that goes with that, where they list out hour by hour and charges to that and what they did on there. So we can put that in the packet if that is the committee's choice. We can do that. So we just put it in the cover sheet just to make sure that we weren't overwhelming you with information or providing a packet that's 600 pages long. So,
Thank you. Mayor Mahoney.
Bernie, in light of that hourly rate, can we just have a brief summary when they have them talk to us rather than a long summary, like Cliff Note type?
If you could, please. Any other discussion on item number 4?
Move to approve the bills.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to approve the bills of $19,194,298.16. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
yes,
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Moving on to item number 5 is the finance report. Again, we call on Susan Thompson. It's on page 21 of your packet.
Yes, so page 21 reflects the historic income statement for the life of the diversion. Page 22 is the current statement of net position. The main diversion fund has assets of $286,910,790, some liabilities of $706,000, so net position of $204,679. The budget fund has a net position of $294. So the grand total net position for both funds is $286,499,354.
Are there any questions, Ms. Thompson? On the finance report? In next month's meeting, could you also include the money that we have invested and what type of interest we're accumulating on a monthly basis, please? Thank you. Any other questions on the finance? This is an actionable item.
I'll move to approve.
Commissioner Pipkern moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Peterson seconds. We have a motion and a second to approve the finance report of $286,499,354. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 6 is a cash budget report. Again, we call on Mr. Paul Barthol. It's on page 44 of the packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I do have a quick update for you on the question on the 2 Dorsey invoices. One was for P3 support, so that's the litigation help in the dispute resolution board preparations. The other was for employment and support, so that is looking at helping the authority with the review of some files and other documents with the resignation of the executive director. So those are the 2 invoices that you see there. As for the cash budget here, annual review, our revenue status here. Just for your information, we do, if you notice, about halfway down, there is financing proceeds that was built into our financial plan and our annual cash budget. So Ms. Thompson, I believe they were rolled into the cash on hand. We can separate that out, but we also do report it here. So this last month, we actually saw about $1.6 million in interest on the funds that Ms. Thompson described earlier. All the others, we did get another 18 million, almost 18.5 million back from our legacy bond funds. And so we're working our way through those funds now. But to this year, we've had almost 49, just over 49 million there. So current month income was just over 26 million, which gets our fiscal year to date just over 91.7, or just under $91.7 million for the year. And this is through the end of June. Next slide. Overall status, level 1 summary. Some things to note here. If you look at channel P3, and we can dive into that a little bit more, we've spent about $5.5 million there. So we can dive into that along with our milestone payments. This fiscal year, we've really only spent $1.1 million. So we've got about $33 million there that depending on when the developer makes substantial completion and meets interim substantial completions per the schedule, we anticipate those potentially hitting later this year. So we'll see when that hits and when the developer makes those substantial completion on several of those items there. Other areas to note, we've done a lot of the third-party mitigation. You'll be hearing a MOU and, I'm sorry, a MURA, and then also a task order that will come underneath this line item later in our budget, later in our meeting here, and later in the agenda. Let's jump to level 2, and we can go over a couple of things. One thing to note on the channel P3, it is land, it is management, legal, financial, and P3 procurement, which is at 5.5 million. And this is the budget line item which the Dorsey that we talked about earlier hits. And so you can see we spent 5 million to date, which also includes oversight of the P3 from various entities and various local consultants, and then also Dorsey and Onstead Twitchell with the work there. So those bills hit there. You can see that we are still tracking within budget, and we have a pretty significant budget for this year because we anticipated some litigation or some additional legal work would be required this year. The other one I'd like to touch on too is down towards the bottom of the page, the lands and impacted property mitigation. Our budget is 571 million in the total program. This year, we're looking at about 64 million, of which we've spent to date. That has hit the books is about 30 million. But as Ms. Thompson highlighted in the bills, there's another 16 that's coming through that's in our bills that will hit the books next month. So we'll actually be very close. We're anticipating by year end to be right at that $64 million mark. And then also like to highlight mitigation and associated infrastructure. Mr. Steen asked a question at the last meeting about why we were over and what that $355,000 was for. Originally, we anticipated, go back up, Peggy. Right there, yep, right there. Originally, when we put the budget together, we only anticipated getting environmental easements from local property owners to do surveys and environmental surveys per the mitigation plan. However, we are still in need of additional forest mitigation lands, and some lands became available to us, so we were able to purchase them. To fulfill our requirement with the Army Corps of Engineers for their forest mitigation program. And so the majority of that funds that you see there that was overspent, that was due to the last piece of forest mitigation property that was purchased. And I think most everything else has been tracking well. Unless folks have questions, we can jump down to the administrative budget. Authority operations and administration budget. As you can see, halfway through the year, we are tracking quite well. Salary, one thing we will be close on looking at that is the benefits we're looking at this year. Salary, I think, will be in good shape. And then the office and other expenses are as they should be, about 50% spent or a little less. So
Would you explain the asterisk there includes pending costs, please?
it includes the pending costs. We basically have taken in the Cass County reimbursement, we take those reimbursement costs and as they're coming in before they're reimbursed back to Cass County. So we'll report them here. So it does include those pending bills back to reimbursement back to Cass County.
Nothing unusual, though.
No.
You're just talking about the function of a monthly.
It's just the month-on-month timing of
Very
when we get the reimbursement request versus when we show it. We didn't really want to show it lagging after the reimbursement was filled.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Commissioner Pipkin.
First of all, I'd like to apologize because we've been looking at this slide for years, and the staff would tell us we're right on budget. And so we made a big mistake by trusting, because what we found out, because of our new executive director interim, the compensation is way out of line. And so we have not been doing our job, and I have not been doing my job, so I'd like to apologize. But literally, we assumed that they were telling us everything was on budget. Well, that doesn't mean, what we're finding out is that doesn't mean things are being done correctly, so.
We should have spent more time on at the beginning of the $1,650,000. That's where the question should have been.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Steen.
I think in relation to that, I do believe that at the beginning of the year, during the budget year, we actually were provided with the detail of every position and the compensation of each position. We all saw that. as a board. I wasn't on the board at that time, but I was on finance committee, and we saw that number. I mean, those numbers. So, I mean, it was available, if, depending on how much time we wanted to spend with it.
But if people are not being honest, what we assumed was, let's say an administrative assistant in the city of Fargo or Cass County or West Fargo or the Diversion Authority were being paid the same. That's what we follow on MetroCog, where we're all same compensation. What we're finding out now, that is not the case.
You want to respond?
You're correct, Dave. It's not the case. The Diversion Authority has never paid the same as what we're paying our county employees. It's always been higher. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's always been higher. Just where we've been.
Mayor Mahoney.
Mr. Chairman, when we did our governance policy, we did discover a couple things about guide rails, and I think the difficulty we had was when you're talking about at the beginning of the year, we would see a budget, but oftentimes Commissioner Pepcorn's concern is advancements or raises were made through the year, which we never saw. It never came back to this finance committee. So I think Commissioner Peterson and myself sometimes got caught. Do you know about it or do I know about it? Neither one of us know about it. I think going forward, as I understand it, with Robert and Michael, you have, in a sense, have a policy now that we will see changes in salary. We will see changes in this budget. If there's any budget changes, we go forward. And I think to Commissioner Pepcorn is we'll be more diligent watching how we do things in the future, and we'll follow more of the county guidelines as I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Grinberg.
Just to add, we had a planning retreat last Friday. Some of these items were talked about then, and as this organization evolves, so will its administrative oversight increase as well. And, one of the items thrown out for discussion last Friday with our facilitator was a notion of an operating approval schedule that gives the board and the authority the option to look at a few pages, who's responsible for what has to be reported, when, who's required to approve. And that's something that's been missing. We have documents. I mean, our JPA agreement spells out a lot of this, but who's going to read a document that thick? This puts it in a concise manner how the next executive director will operate and what he's accountable for.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything, Mr. Stain?
Just one last comment on that. A couple of years ago, several maybe at this point in time, the board got together and they hired a consultant to take a look at policy governance. And the board passed policy governance. Not all of us voted for that, but it passed. And in policy governance, we approve a budget. And the director is responsible to us for the budget. There's no indication, no expectation that the board is involved in the weeds. That's the part of policy governance. Here's the policies. The director is responsible for taking care of all this. We're responsible to monitor the director. That's the deal. And so we don't see all the weeds because that's not part of our purview under policy governance. We see big picture stuff. They take care of it. It's what the board wanted. It's what the board got. Here you're at.
Thank you, sir. Anything additional with regard to the cash budget report by Mr. Bothell? This is an informational item only. Thank you, Paul. We'll be moving on to item number 7 is the MOUs and agreements. We'll call on Mr. Shockley. It's on page 51 of your packet. And this is the CapEx transmission line and the Metro Flood Diversion Authority MURA. And that's on page 53. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And after this, I'll have one just minor update for the Finance Committee also. So I have one item for the agenda today, and that is a master utility relocation agreement for the CapEx program. There's a number of poles that need to be adjusted in the UMA embankment and adjustments for making sure that there's the proper height between the transmission wires and the infrastructure that is underneath it. And Peggy, if you wanted to advance that page. Within the agreement, yeah, I believe there, it just goes over the different types of improvements that are included. This contains a lot of the same provisions that our normal MRRA does, just a little bit more sophisticated because of all of the different infrastructure that's involved. As you can see, there's different stations within Minnesota and North Dakota that need some adjustment. Happy to answer any questions. We did not include all of the exhibits to the agreement because that would have made the packet unwieldy, but happy to provide those if you have additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Questions from anyone in the Finance Committee?
Move to approve.
Mayor Mahoney moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Pipcorn seconds. Been moved and seconded.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
just for the record, I will abstain from voting. A company I work for is part of this agreement.
Thank you, Commissioner Grinberg. Let the record show that Commissioner Grinberg is abstaining. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this line item? Any other discussion? Hearing none, Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duchess?
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger?
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reitz?
Yes.
Ms. Madriga?
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shockley. You have one more item that you'd
Yeah,
like to?
just a quick update. Thank you, Mr. Chair, again, members of the committee. Next month, you may recall the last couple of months, we went through the renewal of the temporary improvement warrants for first the temporary refunding improvement bond. Then we had the temporary improvement warrants for the authority loans, which included the WIFIA loans. The final tranche of that coming up for renewal is the P3 improvement warrants. And so you'll see a resolution next month on this agenda meeting and then at the board meeting, just authorizing the Cass County Joint to renew them. You'll recall that under North Dakota law, those temporary warrants have a maximum maturity of 3 years. And so it was back in 2021 when we closed on everything. So we have to go back and renew those in 3 years. If everything goes according to plan, those will all be converted into definitive warrants. And but I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that was coming up at next month's meeting. Kind of all happens in the background. And if you have any questions, I'll bring up a long presentation. Mayor Mahoney always gives me heck about that, so.
I'm fine with your hourly rate, John.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Any questions on that item, that point? Thank you. Item number A is the Diversion Authority Board approval of contracting actions. Again, we call on Mr. Barthol for that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one item in front of you, and it's actually a follow-up to the item that you just approved with the master utility agreement in place. Underneath that, we assign task orders to do the actual physical design and physical work. And so we are looking at a $1.897 million task order here. There is, Peggy, can you go to the EDCR, the cover sheet? We have already allocated 396,000 of that 1.8. So this is basically just over a $1.5 million addition. It was for the preliminary engineering. The PESA is a preliminary engineering so that we knew exactly what we had to build. And so there was some geotech work, some preliminary design. The remaining 1.5 million roughly will be for the actual relocation of the poles over the SE4 embankment in the area on the Minnesota side. So this is there was no funding, no dollars attached to the MRRA itself. So this is where we allocate the money and provide the funds to the CapEx for the work that needs to be done to do the actual work itself. So,
Do we have an anticipated date when their work will be done?
when their work will be done, they are planning on getting that work done over the winter and early next year.
Thank you.
So one of the reasons we did do the preliminary engineering agreement was so that they could start the ball rolling on their side, get some of their preliminary engineering work completed, and start to order the poles themselves because they have a significant lead time on manufacturing those steel poles.
Thank you. Any questions? We have a motion to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Chad Peterson seconds. Mayor Mahoney moved. With that, I'm going to defer to Mr. Grinberg. Do you want to,
I'll stand again.
let the record show that Mr. Grinberg is abstaining from the vote? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Don, would you please call a roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Dardis. Mayor Mahoney. Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, Don.
Point of order.
Mayor Mahoney.
So Tony abstains, but he really gains nothing by this contract. He's in a competing company, but he abstains because the reason abstaining just because he works for a competing company. Because I'm under the impression if he gains something by it, I don't know that he gained anything by this contract.
It's a gray period, but go ahead.
I would just say the world we live in today, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Okay.
The Century Code reads that your household has to benefit from them. And, you know, being that Commissioner Grinberg is employed by Xcel Energy, it's a safe move on his part.
But his salary doesn't
By
personally go up,
definition,
nothing happens.
probably not, but, yeah. That ends the regular agenda. Is there any other business coming forward at this time? I'd just like to make a comment. Over the past several months, with the work that the staff has been doing, and certainly Mr. Redlinger and Mr. Wilson, thank you. Thank you so very much. You're carrying on your regular duties of the very big jobs that you already have. But when asked questions or for support information and alike, Mr. Redlinger, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Shockley, all three of you have been exceptional at what you've been doing, and we're very grateful for that. So thank you for that. Mayor Mahoney?
You know, in the city of Fargo, and I think in the county as well, if any of our people are asked to do above and beyond their normal workload, there is a provision in our area to pay 10 or 15% extra to their salary. As a finance committee considered that in right of diversion, which we're requesting Robert and Michael to work extra in a sense for doing duties for the diversion authority in a position that was previously funded. I mean, I think Commissioner Peterson, you were thinking about this as well, is that we have to think about this. And I would wonder if that couldn't be a task the Finance Committee could do and bring back to us next month.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you'll find that our chair is already working on that. It's a product I might actually speak to the planning committee regarding that. It's a product of what I went through with the Insurance Reserve Board. So our Insurance Reserve Executive Director retired. I was in, I guess, the chair at the time, and I wound up taking on all these responsibilities as the interim executive director, which isn't really fair to call me that because we have such a good team. I mean, I had symbolically approved some pay and did some things like that, but that was a product of that. So, Mayor, it's already in the works.
Good.
And I think we'll hear more about it in the coming, whether it's week or months. So, yes, I'm already there, and because I went through it, and I just said, you know, I know what those two gentlemen are going through, and obviously the supporting team too. There's some dynamics, so I think that discussion's been started. I think you'll hear more about it soon.
Well, we're doing budget, and I see Michael called out frequently for the diversion issues, and it is a load. It's not just a light load, so.
Extra 5 minutes a month is all Robert told me he's spending on it.
Unfortunately, our
Look at the
chairman,
grimace on his face right now.
the chairman of the Diversion Authority isn't able to be with us today, and hopefully we could see her tomorrow. But it's something that we can bring up to her. I mean, I would believe that it would serve as her, under her purview as the Diversion Authority chairman to name a compensation committee or to, and as you suggested, bring that forward to the planning committee. So that we should note that we should pass on a note to Mayor Carlson with regard to that. Any other business? Anybody from the Finance Committee have any other business they'd like to bring forward? Do any of our staff have anything that they'd like to bring forward at this time? Hearing none, our next meeting is August 22nd. We stand adjourned. Thank you.